the music of your life with me, Darren Clark. And we welcome to the podcast this time around Roxy Whiskey, aka the person behind Roxy Whiskey, Tony Race. If you haven't been in Tenerife and seen Roxy Whiskey, how would you explain your show?
I've always joked about it and saying that I'm a 7-foot tranny, and I know that's not politically correct in the way that, you know, all the categories everybody puts themselves into now, but I've always joked at it like that. I'm a tall Geordie bloke in a dress.
And if you do come to Tenerife, you will be familiar with the name Roxy Whiskey. It's not Roxy Whiskey I'm talking to, it's Tony Henry. Good afternoon.
Hiya, how are you doing?
I'm well, mate. How are you? You well?
Fabulous.
Good. I want to jump straight in.
Let's go.
Because you've got such a massive repertoire of music. So for me, you can kind of turn your hand to most songs because you do your shows quite often every week. You've done it like what, the last 7-8 months since?
Yeah, since
you did lockdown,
yeah.
Isn't it? Is it a nice challenge for you? Is it just something these requests that you get all the time?
It's nice to do other songs. Like when you're on stage, you just do the same stuff over and over again. Like every night, Tina Turner, Cher, the same costumes. Although I love those people, it's the same stuff. Where this is completely different every night. Every time I do a show, it's different people, different requests. Actually asking an audience for your requests for next week. I've got a full week to research and listen and find keys and find tracks and all that sort of stuff.
Did you do that on purpose?
Yeah.
Do a request show? Is it bored? Is it, you know what I mean? You want to keep your mind active kind of thing?
I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks in before I thought I'll do a request show, and then I enjoyed it. The music we were doing was so different. I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. Like I said, I wanted to jump straight in. For the beginnings, the first question I ask everybody is, what was your first recollection of music from your childhood?
Well, actually, first recollection ever would be children's albums that you used to buy before kids were allowed to be into pop music.
Yeah.
It was things like Roger Whittiker sings children's hits, and I'm ashamed to say I had Rolf Harris singing children's hits.
Hey, I think we all did too. I think we all did.
The Muppets children's album, the Disney children's album, which was released yearly, a Disney one. The first sort of song that I remember really, really vividly and clearly is, I must have been about 7 years old when videos first came out, and it was renting out The Wizard of Oz, so it has to be Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Because
that's part of your first two choices were Somewhere Over the Rainbow and I Don't Believe in Ifs. I Don't Believe in If by Roger Whittiker. So you've explained then why Judy Garland, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, because of The Wizard of Oz. Roger Whittiker, was it the same thing, the children's songs?
No, Roger Whittiker, although I love the children's album, silly things like The Runaway Train and all these silly songs, the Roger Whittiker stuff was purely because of Nan and Grandad, being in Nan and Grandad's car, and they had every tape and cassette of Roger Whittiker, and if you said put something else on, they would take that tape out and put in another Roger Whittiker tape. So we knew every Roger Whittiker song, could sing along all the words of every song he'd ever done, really.
Are you from a musical family?
No, not at all. My granddad was the only person that was musical in the family. On my mum's side, he could vamp at a piano, he could pick out a tune, he could pick up really any instrument and have a go at it. He was a great singer when he was younger. And his brother was famous for being a professional whistler.
Professional whistler?
Like Roger Whittiker.
Of course, of course. So it was your grandparents that give you the biggest, I suppose, influence from what you're saying, was it?
Well, music was always part of, like, my mum and dad's. Like, my mum and dad always had the stereo, as it was called, playing.
What kind of music did they like?
We used to call it old... We do want to listen to your old-fashioned music, and it was things like ABBA. I can't think of some of the things that they used to listen to. I remember ABBA, Crystal Gale was another one that my dad liked. Dolly Parton, anything by Dolly Parton. And rock and roll music, they've always loved rock and roll music.
Did that influence stay with you then, as you progressed throughout your life? You've referred back to those songs when you were a child. Is it glimpses of that in, say, the work that you do in your career and stuff like that, moving on?
Well, I think because Dolly Parton is such a strong image and voice, and one hell of a back catalogue, and she's got 2 big hits.
Yeah.
She's got such a big back catalogue of music, and a strong woman. I think that's going to come into any drag act anywhere.
I think so.
Anybody doing drag's going to touch on Dolly Parton. Same as Judy Garland. It's all going to come back in.
Your first 2 songs, as we mentioned earlier, was "I Don't Believe in Ifs," which, do you know what? I didn't even know that song existed until I was at yours. Was it the New Year? Wasn't New Year's Eve the one before
we did the one
that?
Before, yeah.
And you did it for the first time, and I heard bits of it, and I heard it, and I went, wow, how many styles does that song go through?
It does. It's the drama of the song. It's beautifully done.
And
the violin.
Is he dramatic is he dramatic as an artist anyway?
He's not, but he just knows how to use his voice. He can be as dramatic sitting strumming a guitar as he is when he's got a full philharmonic orchestra behind him. He's quite brilliant to watch. And
Judy Garland, "Summer Over the Rainbow," was a pure childhood thing.
Purely childhood, I've got to be honest. I don't go into the Stonewall thing of Judy Garland and all that sort of stuff. I was too young to get that. I understand the history of it now.
Yeah.
But not purely because of being a kid, and it was the video that we got on my mum and dad's nerves, wanting to rent that video every single time we went to the video shop.
So there we go. The first 2 songs. We go to teens to adulthood section. You were brought up in the working men's club, but your parents were stewardesses. That must have had a massive influence.
Oh, it was a big influence. It was music all around you, from a disco to music playing in the lounge all the time. We could go into the club during the day when the club was shut and put music on. 8-track, is it called?
8-track, yeah.
We used to put music on in one of the clubs on an 8-track, and it played in every room in the club. So when we were running around as little kids going mad, music was blaring through speakers through a system in the club. Heaton Buffs and places like that.
Heaton Buffs, my
Cox
goodness.
Lodge.
Cox Lodge, yeah. That's right, they did more than one club, wasn't it? They were quite aware. And so the amount of entertainers that you saw as well must have been quite massive.
Well, there was a lot of entertainers on. Obviously, back then you had, you could have 2-3 shows a night in different rooms and stuff like that. It was a big thing, early 80s. I didn't get to see a lot of them because obviously I was a child, but if there was anything really worthy, Mum and Dad would phone across and say, bring the kids over to see this, or do you think the kids will want to see that? And we got to see different bits and pieces like that.
How did that shape your musical, not knowledge, kind of like your love for music? Did you notice at that time it was growing or veering off into certain directions at that age?
Well, I had a thing about Phoenix was the only, as you know yourself, Phoenix was the only place you could buy toys in Newcastle.
Absolutely.
And I used to go shopping with my mum and dad, but then I used to go shopping with my nan as well. If I asked mum and dad for something and they said no, I could ask my nan for it and get it straight away. And I had asked for, I'd had Christmas, I'd had birthday, and I asked for my mum and dad for a keyboard, a Bontempi keyboard that I just thought was the best thing I'd ever seen in my life. You turned it on and it whirred up until it was ready to press the notes. I thought it was the most amazing thing ever. They said no because I'd had Christmas and birthday. Nan, I didn't say that I'd already asked mum. I asked my nan and she bought it me. And there was hell on. I got a smacked arse and sent to bed and all that sort of stuff.
Worth it though, worth it.
Oh, worth it. But I could pick songs out straight away as soon as I sat down at it. I could play like the theme of Coronation Street or the theme of a kids' TV show or something like that. So mum and dad realised there was something in it. They were in Gosford and Cox Lodge Social Club at the time, who had one of the best organists in the northeast. Played a Technic organ from Japan. I don't remember the man's name.
Davy Swan, was it?
Haven't a clue. Mum and dad would tell you. No idea of his name. But he said that if I wanted to do what he's doing, I had to learn to play piano first.
Right.
So went to piano lessons, and then the love of it went from that.
Yeah, your keyboard playing and your piano playing, of course. You got quite advanced, though. You are quite advanced, aren't you?
Oh, nowhere near what I used to be, but yeah.
You're a good reader.
I can read. Yeah, I can read.
That must have helped expand, I suppose, your knowledge of music. Your knowledge, it definitely did, but not different genres of music because you were playing different things. Did that help as well?
It helps singing. If you're stuck on a phrasing where you can hear yourself going out of key on, say, a key change in the music, or one note that goes to another note that shouldn't necessarily be in.
Yeah.
I don't know, a lot of Jewish musical songs use that sort of stuff. If you can't get it, but you look at the printed music, you get it, well, I get it naturally, automatically.
Like major, minor chord stuff.
You just see it, you see it written down, and you know where your voice has got to go then.
Yeah. I wondered is because with me the same as you used to hear. You said you used to hear something on the radio or on the TV and then play it straight away, and you found that a natural thing. Mm-hmm. Did it help doing it naturally? On hindsight, looking back at it now, for the speed that you became as proficient as you were in the playing and the singing, rather than if you had to work at it, or was piano lessons hard for you?
Piano lessons were hard, I've got to be honest, because it was all about reading music. And as a little kid, you just don't want to be sat there reading music, do you? You don't want to be coming in from school and having another lesson. Which from 6 years old, I had to have piano practice or organ practice, because I changed to the organ when I was about 11 years old. 2 keyboards and pedals. That
was obviously a graduation too. Yeah.
That was the most modern thing at the time.
Though. That would have been so difficult. It's separating everything. Did you
I
find
loved
that
it.
easy?
I've got to be honest. I loved it because it was a more poppy sound than a piano.
Yeah.
Or so I thought at the time. It was a more electric sound, and that's what was coming in at the time in the charts. I could make a song sound more like it should sound on an organ than I could on a piano.
What were you doing musically wise at 18?
At 18?
Because I always say that because we go from teens to adulthood, and that is for me the point where everything opened up for me. And I was just wondering if they did the same start, or was it slightly later on?
18, not really. I was away abroad, and I was singing in karaoke's and stuff like that, but that was it. Nothing musically, nothing. And
we'll touch that on when we talk about career. Mm-hmm. But the 2 songs that you've picked, and we'll talk about now, The Way You Make Me Feel, Michael Jackson. Where did that come from?
Loved Michael Jackson from being a little kid.
Yeah.
We were camping, not camping, I suppose it's called glamping now, in a static caravan that my nan and granddad owned in sea houses.
Oh, yes.
And we had a tiny little, I think it was a 6-inch screen on a thing with the tape and the radio combined. I don't know if you remember them.
Yeah, I do.
Where they had a handle on. And that was the TV for the caravan. And Michael Jackson's Thriller was being released.
Right.
And we all crowded round to watch Thriller, and I thought it was the most spectacular thing I'd ever seen. And that started a love affair with Michael Jackson. Anything he ever did.
Fabulous.
And I think I was the right age. By 1987, I was the right age to appreciate a new album and what an album meant about from your favourite pop star.
So the knowledge was starting to get a little bit more as well. Yeah. So your recognition for the work that they did has become a little bit more. And that moves us on to your second choice. A little bit of a segue for me for what I thought would be your choices. Undercover Agent for the Blues by Tina Turner. How did that one come about?
Again, I loved the Private Dancer album. I loved the What's Love Got to Do with the album, but I was the wrong age to appreciate a new album coming out.
Yeah.
For Tina Turner, she brought out Foreign Affair, 1989, and it was just wow. I was absolutely blown away by the album. It was bluesy, it was dirty, the electro pop sound had gone.
Yeah.
So it was like she would have sounded if she'd carried on from the 60s without having the breaks and the troubles and everything else.
We talked before about it going back to our roots. That's what you said beforehand. Is that, do you kind of like that origin of music, the raw sound which you've mentioned?
Well, I just loved the album. She didn't like it herself. She really didn't. She wanted to get away from doing blues stuff, which was an Ike thing.
Yeah.
But somebody had talked her into this album, Foreign Affair, which is the album that Simply the Best comes from, and Steamy Windows, which, although it's known as a pop song, is quite bluesy in itself.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
She went back to her roots with that, and Undercover Agent was just a really dirty, bluesy sound, and I was the right age to appreciate her talking about rolling up her long silk stockings and all that sort of stuff. So,
in more ways than one.
Yeah, exactly.
So there you go for Teens to Adulthood. touched upon earlier about when you were 18 and you were working away. What brought that on? Why did you go away? What was the whole premise of you going away?
I just wanted to get away from the northeast. I didn't want to be stuck in a dead end job. I left school straight away and decided I wanted to be a graphic artist and got a graphic art apprenticeship for a decent company.
Where was it? Which company was it?
It was Mayfair Printers in Sunderland.
All right. I bet you had to try hard to remember that.
I did really have to. I racked my brains there to think I could take you to it.
Sorry, I got you on the hop.
God, that was the first time I've thought about that one for a long time. Mayfair Printers in Sunderland, and I was meant to be a graphic artist on an apprenticeship, and all the guy had me doing was filing downstairs. I had more talent as far as painting and drawing than he could have even thought of, the guy who was my boss. If somebody came in and wanted a business card with a rose drawn on it, I would be the one that, can you just draw that? Because this was before stock files and computers. Apple Macintosh was just coming into its own then, and it was like a big solid square unit, like an arcade machine.
Yeah.
It was a huge unit on its own, and everything was done in something called points and pikers. And I think we all realised very quickly that we were going to be out of work.
Right.
Because graphic art was changing to computers, and there was no need for painting and drawing and ruling lines and all that sort of stuff. It was going.
And that's something I want to touch on later on. Sorry, that's something. Yeah, something I want to touch on later on. But you said, as far as your singing's that concerned, you played, nothing was happening. What changed?
I was just to keep my hand in, sort of thing. I was playing in a band. I was playing keyboards in a band, but I didn't really have the nerve to sing at the time.
Right.
I just didn't really have the want to do it. So I was playing rock and roll piano in a band, and an odd bit of vocal, like harmonising with the lead singer.
Yeah.
A fella called himself Bobby V.
Bobby V, I know the name, and I know the person. Yeah. So you went from there, and as you got older, where did your musicality, favourite music and that go from? How did you like then? Because let's look at the two songs. First, Brenda Cochran. That was a big surprise, because did she win Opportunity Knocks?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
She won Opportunity Knocks, and
89, I think. Was it 89?
Oh, God knows when she won that. I really don't remember. It must have been round about then. Must have been round about 89. I remember she was doing a tour, and my mum and dad said to me, "Do you want a big party for your birthday?" And I'd said, "No, can we have tickets for the four of us and Nan and Grandad to go see Brenda Cochran because she was on tour?" So it was the first sort of theatre concert that I got to see, and I always admired her very, very much. I always loved her voice. Oh, she was just a one-off.
She was a cover singer, wasn't she?
She was a covers, yeah. She was on Opportunity Knocks. She won Opportunity Knocks, and then she went to cruise ships, and she released a few albums that were commercial successes.
Yeah.
But she stayed mainly at cruise ships, and she still is.
Yeah. What did you like about her voice, though? What was it?
Just a power. She had such a power to her voice, and there was like a warble there. There was like a I don't know how to, like a clean Elkie Brooks sound to her voice, more powerful. And a few years down the line, working over here, I got introduced to her, and I had to sign the original album that I bought all those years ago. She
seems to be one of those singers. Obviously, when you mentioned her name, it took me back a bit when I was researching and listening to her. You hit the nail on the head there. Clean Elkie Brooks. Pitching and the clarity in her voice was just bang on all the time.
Yeah.
Kind of like, I would say, because I was she like an early version of Jane MacDonald, but she was probably better.
Far better than Jane MacDonald.
Yeah, absolutely.
Far better than Jane MacDonald.
And your other choice was Liberace, the saber dance. And you know, I was kind of surprised, but I wasn't surprised. Firstly, because I wasn't surprised because of the piano.
It was more the piano thing. It was Liberace. It was more the piano than Liberace, because Liberace I just looked at as a ridiculous joke. I always found him ridiculous to look at and ridiculous to hear speak. But when he touched the piano keyboard, it was just mesmerising. And the way he moved his left hand on the keyboard during that particular song by Cacciatorian in particular, the way he moved his left hand, how fast his left hand bounced, and then the right hand just seemed to do absolutely nothing in sync with the left hand, but just sounded so incredible. It just blew my mind.
But go back then, so when you were playing the organ,
Yeah.
What the difference between the left hand and the right hand.
Yeah.
That's kind of an advanced, almost like an advanced version of that, isn't it? Is that what you wanted to? Is that what you aspired to be like in terms of playing?
I would love to say that I could play like Liberace. I'll never ever play anything even 1/10 the style of Liberace. He was on his own. There's just no one else like that.
Was it his choice of songs as well? Because he was a showman, and his songs did reflect that, did they not? Oh, I think so anyway.
I've watched from, I think it ran from the early 1950s. I've watched every single episode, and sometimes it was broadcast and recorded twice a week. I've watched every single episode of the black and white Liberace show.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I can honestly say it's really not because of the songs that he played. It's just his style, the way he could just pick the most difficult of piano solos and just still look at the camera, still do the wink, still do the silly smile, still do the flamboyant hands bouncing up and down, jumping all over the place, and not even care about the music. It was as if it wasn't in his head at all.
This is good, because we always touch on music that's emotional to a person and music that we respect for their technical ability. Mm-hmm. And where, I suppose, for me, because I'm a piano player like yourself, we have these kind of people who we aspire to be, or we have got much more respect for their technical ability.
Yeah. And
I think that's it's a massive difference to love somebody for the technical ability, but love somebody for the emotion it's got in their voice. And is that when you started to differentiate from the two?
I don't know really. I think the power and delivery of Brenda Cochran is similar to the power and delivery of Barbara Streisand, or the power and delivery of Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli, some of these big divas. Liberace is just... It was just so talented. It was just so much talent, and the fact that, I don't know if it was publicity or not, but he said he very rarely sat down and practiced. He very rarely sat down and rehearsed.
Wow!
I don't know if that's true or not. How the hell did he get to play?
Yeah.
How did he get to play like that if he didn't rehearse? But he could hear the song and remember it.
A song that I ask, a question that I ask is, what was your first record you ever bought?
Oh. I'm ashamed to say it was a 45 of Cliff Richard.
Fantastic.
And the Young Ones doing Living Doll.
Why?
Because it was in the charts and everybody was singing along with it, and I loved the fact that Aid Edmondson as Vivian smacked Cliff Richard with a shovel.
There you go, you see, there's the reason. Finally we have the reason why. What music makes you emotional?
Show songs, show tunes, songs from musicals.
Where does that take you when you watch a musical like that? Let's say you watch, is it from going back to your Wizard of Oz days when you were a child?
No, Wizard of Oz was just because I loved that video. It was just that was the first song that I remember just from a video.
Yeah.
So I can honestly say it doesn't come from that. I just think with musical performers in like a West End show or a Broadway show, they've got literally the first 10 minutes of them being on stage to sell themselves as that character, and by the end of it, if they do the job right, you're sobbing your eyes out. Miss Saigon, Leah Salonga, that played the part of Miss Saigon, when a little boy is going to be shot and she's cradling him in her arms and she's singing to him. You got Les Miserables when Eponine dies in Marius's arms.
Who also was played by Leah Salonga.
Tears streaming down your face, and they've got minutes to do that, minutes to make you believe who they are and put it across in a song. I love that.
What's your favourite musical? Do you have one?
I've got loads of favourites, but I would say out of all of them, Phantom of the Opera has to be my absolute favourite ever.
Why?
First one I saw, the first big musical I saw live on stage, and Phantom of the Opera was just so impressive. I was the right age again. I was the right age for the music, and the fact that it was Frank Spencer playing the part. I just could not believe Frank Spencer could be something so dark and sexy on stage.
And then we go back this section to your song choices. You're the Voice by... number of questions I wanted to ask you about your career. I haven't even scratched the surface. I suppose we could talk for ages about it because you've had a very varied career, but you went abroad. And you were a rep, weren't you?
I was a holiday rep. I got to work all over the world. I went everywhere that I wanted to go before finally settling down in Tenerife. But it was settling down here where I decided to leave the repping thing and take charge of a hotel's entertainment programme.
And when you became Roxy Risque, music must have shaped that in a way.
Music was everything to do with that then, because I decided that rather than be a lip-syncing drag queen, which the majority are, I was going to do it live from the very start, singing and performing it live, which gave me the edge on everybody else that was doing it on the island at the time.
It's a completely different type of entertaining, though, isn't it, when you're actually singing live rather than just, I would say miming for want of a more respectful word, but it is, really,
it's lip-syncing, they call it. As far as a drag queen's concerned, it's lip-syncing, but that's an art form in itself, but it's not something that I was ever interested in doing. I wanted to use the music and the knowledge that I'd learned and the things that I know about. I wanted to put it into practice on stage live rather than letting Tina Turner's knowledge shine through. I wanted to use my own.
And that shows a lot of confidence when you're always a confident person.
Always.
It does help doing the act that you do have, but it always, and that comes now because when we talk about favourites, guilty pleasures, we'll do your guilty pleasure at the end, but your favourites, once again, we could go on for ages about your favourites. The list that you've given me was almost endless.
I could keep going with favourites, yeah.
Is this time though, when during your career, is this when everything just went massive? As in terms of who you were listening to and what you were, because honestly, the list of acts you've given us has been huge.
I didn't have a. I think if I was to open up my CD wallet and files, and we all bought CDs back in the day. If I was to open them up, I've got as much Barry Manilow as I have Barbara Streisand, as I have Shirley Bassey, as I have Eartha Kitt, Diana Ross. I've got as many albums by each of those people, but then I'm ashamed to say I've got like all of Madonna's because that was the era that I grew up through. Rod Stewart's because I liked him,
When you talk about Madonna and the pop, did you kind of have a respect for that kind of music?
I respected Madonna. I didn't
as
have
a performer or a musician.
As a performer and a musician, she wrote a lot of her songs herself, and when it came down to putting on a show, she was second to Michael Jackson, and that's one hell of an accolade for anybody. When it came to big stage concerts and stuff, she really could do it. So she proved herself, and I respected that. But my growing up music was things like Stock, Aitken and Waterman and everything they unfortunately ever did. And I suppose it sort of ruined that for me in school. The little nothing acts. I always thought of Kylie as a nothing act, which I'm ashamed to say that now because she's proved her staying power and she's still here. And you've got to respect the woman in that. Not that I ever liked her. I wasn't a fan.
We still
respect her.
We still make the comparisons between emotive music and music where you admire. And you suppose you could do that with the Stock, Aitken and Waterman. Looking back on it now, you admired it for what it was or what it was then. As
a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid bopping along with a kid's disco, Sonia was fantastic.
Absolutely. It seems more you're the kind of person that becomes quite involved in music, as in we talked about musical theatre, and we've talked about the big performers such as Madonna and Michael Jackson. It's how they convey a song, how they convey a production. Is that what grabs you?
That and the image. How they put it across, if it's an emotional performance, if it's a technically brilliant performance, it's incredible. But I think the image was a lot to do with it as well. Being artistic, the painting and drawing side of things, if you can draw one eye on a piece of paper, and if it's Michael Jackson's eye, you know exactly whose eye that is.
I get it,
You can draw Marilyn Monroe's eye on a piece of paper and know whose eye it is.
It's the icons of the world, isn't it?
It's like Louis Armstrong. You can see his face blurred and from a distance, but you know exactly who it is before you're anywhere close.
Yeah, I like that. If we go on to your favourite songs, like I say, we could talk forever about your favourite songs, but the two that you have picked, I don't think I'm surprised at all, because some of the listeners won't actually know we're very close friends. But you picked One Voice by Barry Manilow and Rain on My Parade, Barbra Streisand. I want to go back to Rain on My Parade first, because what makes you pick that as a favourite above so many other favourites that you've got?
It's just so well written. It's incredibly well written. Judy Stein wrote the music, and Barbra Streisand is this young girl running away from her job, from her career, to be with a fella that she loves in the movie. And she's singing this song as she's parading down a train platform. She's saying, "Get out my way," and I think it's reflected not only in the film to the story, but it's reflected in her life as well. She's 21 years old and she's already at the pinnacle of, well, she's at a point in her career where some people never get to, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Are you a sucker for a good story?
Oh, well and truly.
Yeah.
Well and truly.
So you look at Les Miserables, Miss Saigon, things like that, you would say that is it the story that drives you more rather than the lyrics for a song? I know we talked about that marriage of a song to was the lyrics and the music and the performance, but I suppose all that is being encompassed in a musical.
It is. I don't know. There's some musicals that are just the great music, but just like bleh. Yeah, Oklahoma is great. Some great songs there, but bleh. The story. Carousel. Okay, there's a lovely bit where he comes back from the dead and he walks down the cloud steps and all that sort of stuff. That's great, but the rest, bleh. Yeah. Doesn't get me. West Side Story. Some amazing songs, but bleh. For me.
For you, of course. No, I actually agree with you. There are some musicals that just don't grab you, but tiny bits do.
Yes.
Moving on to your other favourite choice, Barry Manilow, One Voice. I actually was going to say, if I had to name a Barry Manilow song that you would love, more than any of the others would stand out, would be One Voice. But you tell me and everybody else, why One Voice?
I've seen him live quite a few times now, and I think 2 or 3 times that I've seen him, he's actually finished the show with singing One Voice. After the poppers and the streamers and the fireworks have all gone off, he's come back out on stage and sang it with just a microphone, no music playing whatsoever, and he just does it flawlessly. One time I got to see him do it with a Welsh coal miners band, a Welsh coal miners choir that had the lamps on the top of their heads, and they harmonised with him, no music playing. It was just spectacular. It's one of my favourite, most powerful songs ever.
When I know the performance, one of the performances when he does the song right at the very end of the show, the curtains close and he comes in front of the curtains, doesn't he?
That's right.
Was it because we've had the emotion of the performance all the way through, and then he comes up with that at the very end? And does that just heighten the emotion?
I think he's a very emotional singer anyway. I mean, he not that his face registers emotion now, but you know, back in the day, if you were upset or whatever, I mean, nowadays it's Bridget Jones, isn't it? All by Myself. Everybody sits and cries to All by Myself. But back in the day, it was Barry Manilow you put on. And I just love his songs. I love his style of writing, and I love the tone of his voice. He can throw it and be really powerful. He can be really soft. And seeing him live, again, just a brilliant performer to watch.
We mentioned lots of other performers, such as Elton John, Eartha Kitt, Shirley Bassey, Rod Stewart. They're very strong.
Yeah, big
performers. That's a pull for you. Yeah.
The strength of the on-stage presence and the look of them and all that sort of stuff does it for me. And I know you're going to cringe when I say this, but I was never a Freddie Mercury fan.
Yeah.
Although it's a big presence and a big image, Freddie Mercury.
What was it? Can you put your finger on what was it that you didn't like?
There was no glamour in it. There was no glamour at all. It was just a scruffy band on a big stage.
I call it the Vegas effect, because I love. There's part of me that loves the glitz of the whole lot, but I also love the spit and sawdust kind of. Are you all for the glitz and the glamour side of it?
I can't say I am, because we all saw Elton John over here live, and Elton John performed on a golf course because he'd lost a bet. He performed on a golf course and there was no glitz and glamour of the stage. It was just a black stage with a black backdrop, and his piano in the middle. And although he was in a black jacket with coloured sequins on it, there was no glitz and glamour involved whatsoever. It was just brilliant songs by a person that's
such a marriage, isn't it? It's that perfect marriage, I suppose, that we all look for in performers. So the favourite songs, I always say to the people I speak to about this section, I like it because it shows us how weird we all are. And guilty pleasures, I suppose it's one of those kind of things where you're quite happy that you like them, but you really don't want to tell anybody else you like them. Have you got more than one guilty pleasure? Do you have?
I've got so many guilty pleasures.
Because you said Cliff Richard at one time.
Oh no, he's not a guilty pleasure. He will never ever be a guilty pleasure of mine. No.
What do you like about your guilty? But why do you think people should have a guilty pleasure for a start?
Oh, I think anybody can like whoever they want. You can't say to anybody you shouldn't like that or you shouldn't like this. If you like it, you like it. It's as simple as that. But mine is a strange one in that it's Joni Mitchell. And I know a lot of people are absolutely obsessed and know every single thing she's ever done in her catalogue. And, you know, people rave about her being this hippie chick from the 60s and all that. I really don't know anything about her. I really don't know anything other than the one album that, for me, came from the movie Love Actually.
All right.
That song that she sings, Both Sides Now, in the movie Love Actually, was just incredible. I got the album. I absolutely loved the album. And it was after that somebody said to me, you should listen to a song called Big Yellow Taxi.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fantastic as well. But not the hippie chick sat there with the long hair strumming a guitar and selling out stadiums and all that. Just didn't do it for me. And
I wondered why, because the version that you mentioned was 2009 or 2010 version, something like that. And she sounds a lot different. She's not the high-pitchedness. She's got quite a jazz clubby, quite laid back, smoky room kind of voice. What was it about? Was it about that song? What was it about that song that kind of made it you love it?
I've got to be honest, I recognised the song from a Roger Whittiker album.
Hey.
When I was a kid, but the 2003 version of it in Love Actually, before you found out that it was Joni Mitchell, the song was playing, and I just thought, oh my god, I love that voice. And internet being what it was at the time, you know, it was difficult to get internet on your phone in 2003.
Yeah.
But when I got access to internet on a computer, I researched as to who it was. I found out it was Joni Mitchell. Couldn't believe it was the same, like you say, high pitched,
absolutely, yeah,
squeaker that she used to be back then. And it was the change in her voice. It was just so dramatic, the change. And when I listened to the other songs that were on the album, I absolutely loved that album. It's one of my favourite albums of all time. So from 1966 to 2003, I became a fan.
Fabulous. Do you find, we're talking about the voices, do you find that you went through that yourself, changing your voice? Have you always been able to sing as you have always been able to sing?
I've always been able to sing. I think stopping smoking was a big help.
Oh, yeah,
stopping smoking helped. And voice is as normal as I've ever been, sort of thing.
Have you ever wanted to have a different kind of voice? Have you ever wanted to go through the big, because you do get some high notes, but you hit them in such a way where, I suppose if other singers tried to hit them, they would hit it for this fraction of a second and then plummet to the ground. You've got quite a very, I'm going to say a massive set of lungs. But you take a good run and jump in a note, you breathe well. Would you like to have those screechy rock kind of stuff?
No, not the rock notes. No, not the rock notes. But I would love to have the top notes of, say, Phantom of the Opera or Les Miserables, Bring Him Home, Boudoir from Miss Saigon. Yes. I would love to have those notes in my voice.
Yeah.
Which, it's just laziness, because if I was to do the vocal workouts, I would get up to those.
I'm sure you would. Yeah, I'm sure you would. Before we do finish, we obviously your guilty pleasure, Joni Mitchell. The song was Joni Mitchell, Both Sides Now, in which we'll play in a moment. But before we do finish, the work that you do here in Tenerife as an artist, where can we find that on Facebook?
Roxy Risque. Roxy Risque has her own Facebook. You can link to Tony Race, myself, or Roxy Risque.
And you do a live Facebook live show every Saturday, which you've done. We've touched on this before. You've done. How long has it been now?
I think we started in just after the beginning of April.
Wow.
I think that was the first one. Sat down playing piano and being on live, and people saying, "Can you play this? Can you play that?" and doing it as a silly thing. And the following week, I did a request show with karaoke, using a karaoke machine. And then the week after that, it was sod it, let's put Roxy on.
And then you've done it
every single Saturday.
Has it been a saviour for you?
I've just loved it, I've got to be honest. it's just been like a breath of fresh air. It's been a little release every week.
Do you find as though you've connected in a better way with your audience, or in a more intimate way, or is a gig always going to have that intimacy about it?
It seems to be quite personal, because when I'm fully dressed up and I'm stood there, because I put the show, I start the show 10 minutes beforehand.
Yeah.
I put background music on and show the corner of the room that I'm going to be stood in. And when I'm stood there reading the comments, everybody's saying, hello to this one, hello to that one, how are you doing? And da-da, can't wait, believe it, we're back this week, and da-da-da. Everybody's having a chat. And
they're talking to each other.
It's like a community,
wow,
yeah. Everybody's having a chat. It's always, hello Tony and Billy, hello Roxy and Billy.
Yeah.
It's really lovely, it really is. And my mum and dad have said, well, we get to see you 2 or 3 weeks of the year when we come over, but we never get to see you do all this sort of stuff.
That's a good point, yeah.
Loads of my friends will say they've not watched TV on a Saturday night for months and months now, which is such a compliment.
That is lovely, that's really, really nice. So there you go, we've got Tony Race the artist, we've got Roxy Risque the performer, and we've also seen Tony Race the performer as well on a couple of Saturday nights. Is there anything else that's going to happen? Have you got anything new in the pipeline? Is the new stuff that...
This week's show, it's a musicals request show. People have asked for musicals, so it's going to be girls. I think a few weeks down the line we'll do a boys one. Just keep it coming. Just keep the requests coming in. Keep listening in. As long as you're listening in and watching, then I'll be online. And
there you go. Tony Race, thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. We could have done this all day, but unfortunately we need to go to a bar and get blind drunk.
Oh,
so
why not?
Why not?
The music of your life with Darren Clark.
Held high.